Okay, I totally stole you after just like 1 week. Like, I think this is a record for like, hey, come on the podcast. Hey, you're now like a part of the podcast. Like,
Yeah.
it's just because like when we were talking last week, like I had so many questions left, and I still know that we're gonna go through an hour, and I'm still gonna be like, so you're coming back, right?
Probably, yeah.
And in honor of you and your fairy outfits, I did wear my like cute pajamas with like the hood and the thumb holes, the
Yay.
sparkly makeup. I was like, I'm going to be cute for this. I
Love
will
that.
not do my usual sweatsuit. I'm gonna try for
Hey,
this fairy.
it's okay. You don't have to try for me, but I'm loving the outfit. Like,
Let
it's
me rephrase. You inspired me.
well, glad. I'm glad to do that.
And my daughter is always telling me, like, why don't you dress up? You know, it doesn't matter if you don't go out. You could totally dress up at home, mom. And that's what she does. She wears like the
Hmm.
cutest little like cottage core dresses with like darling little corsets and like just to like go to school online and run around the house. I'm like, yeah, that's I think I'm just lacking the energy.
Understandable. Like I definitely did for the longest time, but I'm like finally getting to the place where I'm like, no, I'm just gonna dress up because I want to dress up. You know? Why not? Life
Like
is too short.
something like psychological about it too. Just like a sense of delight. Like I think we forget that.
Yeah, and like I always feel I it's weird. It's definitely like a psychological component, but I always feel a little bit better when I dress up. I'm like, you know what? I got out of my sweats for today. I feel good. I feel good about myself. The world feels a little bit brighter.
Plus,
Yeah.
it's like even just like glitter. Like I fell for the TikTok like eyeshadow thing that had like the holographic like blue to purple. And like, I don't know why that delights me, but I'm at this weird point in my life where it's like I don't fucking care what someone in the grocery store thinks. Like, it's like the kawaii sweatshirt in pastel pink with the frog with like the little strawberry hat delights me. That's what's happening today. There's so much
Exactly.
delight in the world. I am like going to pitbull delight.
Truly. Truly. I'm like, we just have to find like joy every day.
Right?
And however we get that, fine enough. Because otherwise we're all just like crying in a corner.
And I don't think people realize, like, I think people think that like joy and kindness are weaknesses. I'm like, do you know how strong I have to be to choose to be kind? Do you know how strong I have to be to risk that vulnerability? Do you know how strong I have to be to even think about hope or think about joy? That's such strength. That's also our rebellion. I don't think people realize that joy is a rebellious act.
It definitely is. Like because I'm like, okay, I could let the inner demon Faye come out and like we could go on a rampage,
We
right?
could.
Trust me, I've got so many years of like repressed anger in there that one day. But like, I feel like being kind is a choice. And like we just met our neighbors a couple months ago and they invited us to like this queer family dinner. And we were just talking about the importance of like community and like building our own I don't know, little community. And like that's how we get through these times. And like just looking out for one another and being kind.
It shouldn't feel like a radical action, but when we have actual like leadership saying empathy is the problem, I'm like, ooh, you are a coward, sir. If you are scared to perform empathy, that is a level of cowardice I don't know how to wrap my brain around.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah,
So
sorry, still step bile after yesterday's news. I'm like,
I yeah, I'm like that's my message. Just be kind to people. Like if you can't do anything else, just be kind. That's it. Like
I think we're at this weird point too, where it's like I generally have always been like, look, just be kind to people, and even people you don't agree with, be kind to them. They might see some sort of sanity at the end of the tunnel. And then I feel like we got to this weird level of humanity that I was not prepared for, nor do I have the proper advice for yet, because I don't know where I land on any of it. Where it's like, yeah, Elon Musk comes into your space. Are you kind to him? Like,
okay, yeah, no.
the kindest thing I can do for him is give him a reality check and be like, wow, you're an asshole. Like, I feel like that's the kind thing to do is to like give people a reality check because, holding their hand gently seems to be the thing they don't want us to do. They said empathy bad. So
Yeah.
I guess the kindest thing I can do is remind people Teslas are terrible cars. They are horribly dangerous. If he
They
gets
will explode
they
and
will.
kill
I
you.
like seriously, you really think that people are like doing that at those dealerships when they just do those like why the effort? Like just give it a second. They'll do it on their own. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's like someone wants to come and be violent with me. I'm like, Do you really want to put the effort in? Because my body is going to dislocate itself. Like, you really don't have to. You can dial it back. You don't have to work so hard. Like, hurt
Yeah.
my feelings? Oh, my friend, my inner voice can hurt my feelings so much better. Less
Yep.
you're on the internet and on social media, you think you can. I used to teach junior high. You really
Oh,
think, ooh, bless your heart.
those middle schoolers can be brutal sometimes.
They're entertain at least they're funny about it. Like,
Yeah.
the comments I get on, like, the podcast, on our, like, reviews and on, like, the social media, like, flapping lips, or like, "That's not even original. I'm old and ugly? Really? Like, that's what you got? Okay. Mazel tov. Cheers." I don't know what to tell you. Like, I read Shakespeare. You'll get better insults. Just read Shakespeare. It will help.
Oh my
See, this
god.
is my way of being kind to assholes. Read Shakespeare. You'll find better ways to insult people.
Like, if you're gonna be mean, at least entertain me with it. Like, give me
Right?
something to laugh at.
You've got to at least try. Like, it
Mhm.
can't be that basic. Like, don't make me wonder if you're a bot. Like, you got to be at least smarter than, like, AI reprogrammed BS by people who don't know how to actually. Like, if a drag queen insults me, I know I'll be leveled forever. Like, I will never come back from Bob the drag queen dragging me. It will never happen. That's
That's
the way
so
you
fair.
insult people. Like, if you can get to the level of drag queen, I think you can run the world. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, we just need drag queens to run the world. Let's be so for real.
some of them.
Yeah, some.
Them.
Not all of them.
I'm here for Ben de la Creme. I'm here for Bob. I even think Adore could do a decent job. Now, do I want Alaska anywhere near power? No. No, 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 no.
Fair.
Do I want to have brunch with Alaska? Yes. Do I want that woman having her claws in anything? No, no, I'm scared.
Valid. Yes.
Sharon? No, no, Sharon. No, 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 sweetie. No. Sorry, I'm a little obsessed with drag. It's a problem. I've gotten a little better over the last year or two. That show changed my life. I and I'm not, I mean, I'm queer, but I'm not any gender, like, I'm as cis as they come. But that show changed my entire perception. Part of it was like seeing different body types in joy and in loud colors, and feeling safer in my own body, like experimenting with clothes and makeup, and seeing people who fought that hard to be who they are, and seeing that absolute joy when they get to express that. It's such a beautiful art form.
It is. And the talent, magnificent.
Yes, so many of them are like, oh my gosh, like Adore. Like, I'm so obsessed with Adore Delano. And part of it is because, like, their aesthetic is so like the 1990s Riot Girl, which was my generation. Flannels and, yeah, and Doc Martens, those are my people. Like, the music is so good, and like the aesthetics are awesome. And yeah, I haven't watched this
For
latest
sure.
season, but yeah.
Yeah, I am not up to date in the slightest.
We used to have a whole thing, with my cousin lives near our house, and so it was like all of us would get together every week and watch the latest episode. And we have not done that in a while, and I'm very sad about it.
Fair. I'm like, it's just been, I don't know, I feel like everything has been insane. So,
So my sister came over for brunch the other day, and we were just talking about how old we were, because like we keep forgetting. And like in my head, I'm still like 42, maybe, like somewhere in the early 40s. And
mhm.
I just got a quick reminder from my child that no, I'm actually almost 50. And I was like, and I looked over at my sister. I'm like, did you know this? Because I don't think I knew this. And she's like, weirdly, yes, I did. And I have to tell you, I went to the doctor the other day, and they asked me how old I was. I was like, 42. And they're like, COVID happened and those years count, right? How old are you really? And it's like, oh, I'm like, I think that's what it is. I think like COVID, like, just took out my brain cells. And I'm like, those, not that COVID's over. COVID's totally happening. Please, people, mask up, do what you can to keep safe. But like those years where we all stayed home, like, I think I just forgot that those count towards my age. And yeah.
Those years felt like the video game loading screen for me, where you're just
Oh my
like,
God.
yeah, you know, like I don't know. It doesn't feel like it counted towards any life experience, and yet it was like traumatic. You know, you're like, wait, what did I do? I forgot. Like, I'm 25, and I constantly go, how old am I? How like I'm
Oh
just
my
like
gosh,
I
you're so young, and these are like those are the years where you're like, it's not surprising at almost 50 that I'm like, huh, what are we doing on a Friday night? I guess we're gonna be wild and crazy and watch Wicked until midnight.
whoa.
Yes, but when I was like your age, it was like, so that club closed at 2 a.m. What else is open? Oh, let's get tacos. And common time for work. I don't know how I did that, but like, yeah, party until the club closed, and then tacos, and then you sort of like slug yourself home. I would go to college in the morning in a hangover, and then I would go to work at 3 o'clock after school, and then come back at night for grad school. I don't know how I did any of that.
You know, I wish I had that energy. I feel like I went to college during those years, right? Like those were my last 2.5-ish years of college. And so like I had my 21st birthday at home with my parents. Like I had my first legal drink with my parents and we just played Mario Kart out. And like
Love that.
I'm like everyone who is my age and like who went through that, I feel like it's just like I don't know what to do because like we don't like a lot of people in my friend group just we don't club, we don't go to bars. We're just like we can watch a movie. I can teach you how to crochet.
That's awesome. I want that party. I want to go to the party where people teach crafts. And like
Yeah,
you get
well,
to sit around and drink, and like someone teaches you how to crochet, someone teaches you how to do wood burning. Like that
mhm.
sounds like fun to me.
Yeah, I'm like I think I have. I mean, especially being like chronically ill, I have rediscovered a new kind of fun for myself because, like, yeah, I'm at home all the time, but I can still like pick up new hobbies. I can craft. I can do all this fun stuff, and like I've kind of been converting our friends into like what my wife and I are calling our like grandma era.
Oh my
You know?
gosh, yes. Like your generation is like, it's just you're about the same age as my oldest and only a few years older than my youngest. Like it, it cracks me up like hanging out with their friends because it's like you guys are so much smarter than we were. Like you guys are so much smarter. Do you need to go out and like kill your liver? No, no, you don't. You're actually gonna have not as much. Trust me, it's not as much fun. You're gonna have way more fun hanging out, having like real relationships, drinking tea, and like grannying. Like seriously, houseplants
Yeah,
so much more fun, especially when you can smoke the houseplant. Like even better.
truly, for sure.
Interest in mushrooms. Like my child's 18, and I was just reading a study on that generation, and they are the least likely to have sex, the least likely to drink, least likely to smoke, least likely to have a driver's license, least likely to, and it's like, and it's being framed as a crisis. And I'm like, I'm sorry, this is a crisis that my child is not sneaking out of their bedroom at 11 o'clock to jump in a stranger's car to go to the city. Not a true story that happened to me. Not,
Definitely not.
no, I did not. Sorry, mom. I don't have to worry about that. Like, I ended up being like the worst teenager ever, and then my karma was I got a adorable little fairy grandmother as a daughter who just wants to make jewelry and collect sparkly things. Like, I
I
got
love that.
smog. I gave birth to smog. Occasionally, it spits fire at me and growls, and then it goes back into its den and curls around shiny things. And then, of course, all my shiny things are gone because they come into my room and extract treasure. But I'm good with the dragon rather than like the angry little rabbit raccoon that I was. Like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like I had 1 year of like traditional college like clubbing fun, and then I think I'm good. I think that's it. I think I was like, okay, you know,
One night of clubbing pays for so many craft supplies.
truly, it really does. And then you don't have to worry about like who's sober enough to drive home. Who knows?
My favorite. What did I do last night?
Exactly.
And thank God there's no cell phone cameras when I was growing up. God. I have few things I can say I was very lucky in, and that there was no evidence of any of the stuff that went down.
Oh, you're lucky. I'm sure someone has blackmail on me somewhere out there in the abyss.
You know, the weird thing though, I think the upside here to this constant surveillance is we don't get to pretend to be perfect anymore. And I
Mhm.
think that's a huge difference is that like everyone was so easy to shame back in my day. Like anything that made you human was like, and that'd be like a nickname that followed you forever. And now it's like the kids are putting like that stuff up loud and proud with a hashtag. And I'm like, I think I kind of see the upside to living in a zoo.
Yeah. I'm like there were a lot of downsides to like social media and just this constant surveillance, but it can be also nice to just see like be themselves.
Yeah, going back to RuPaul, if you look at what the queer world was like in the 90s, I will just inform you in case you are not aware of how bad shit was when we were growing up.
Yeah.
If there was two men or two women kissing, there would be a card that would come across your television, and it was basically telling you to make small children leave the room. This is so dangerous and so bad. That didn't happen with rape scenes, that didn't happen with murder, but if you were like going to show two people being affectionate to each other that were the same gender,
Yeah.
oh my god. So it's a different world, and I'm so happy that that is more accessible and that people can now know what things are. And one of my best friends, or like very much closely getting to be like one of my favorite people in the world, is non-binary and has just found out and discovered this because of social media. Like before, it's like, I just don't feel comfortable. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know. Because when you live in a state or a community and like the only place you get to go is church, and then your friends and family are all just at that church, you don't know what else is out there.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the big upsides of being able to allow for people to learn more. I just got lambasted for this too, so I'm like trying to walk real carefully on it. I was just having a political discussion with someone, and they were like, "You're being way too nice to these Trump supporters." And it's like, I'm not being nice. I'm just trying to point out, if we're going to talk, we need to also acknowledge that some people live where the entire state feels one way. And that if
Yeah.
everyone you've ever trusted, your pastor, or a mom, your priest, whatever is your community, and then all of your friends, all of your coworkers, everyone around you, everyone you've ever trusted says this one thing. Yeah, it can get real hard. I'm not saying that we can't think for
Mhm.
ourselves. I'm just saying that that's a privilege to be able to think for yourself. That means you've gotten the education to think critically. It means you felt safe enough to think for yourself and express
For
that.
sure.
So yeah, I had quite a fun time on social media defending that one.
Yeah.
This is puppy world where I should not be standing up and walking, but there's a puppy.
Oh, that was.
Oh, love this dog. I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing. This was part of why we got the dog, was because I was spending most of my life in bed, and we needed a service dog. And my husband was like, if we have the dog, you can't stay in bed. You're going to have to get up and move around. So I'm still
Mhm.
not sure if this is a good or a bad thing for my health. We'll find out. But yeah.
It might not be great for your physical health, but like could be great for your emotional health.
It saved my emotional health. I mean,
Yeah.
I tell you that my emotional health was gone with this administration. It was
Yeah.
gone. I was the depression, anxiety, and terror I was feeling every day. I was like catatonic, and yeah, yeah. Okay, he is being a beast. So we had done this specifically because we're recording this. I keep saying we're recording this like right after New Year's because my brain still thinks it's January.
Time isn't real.
What? I think we all died during COVID. This is now the bad place, and time doesn't make sense anymore because I still feel like it's February. Like, and I think we're what, middle of March, end of March.
Yeah, we're almost to the end of March.
All right, so
Uh,
my daughter's graduating in like a few months, and I'm in such denial that this is what my baby is graduating high school, and I'm like, nope, that's not a thing. No, I'm still in my 20s or 30s. How is this possible?
well,
Mm-mm.
congrats to her.
So proud.
Sorry to you.
I don't think anyone quite prepares you for getting older. Like I remember my parents saying, like, it's weird. Like this doesn't make sense. I'm like, what do you mean it doesn't make sense? You absolutely lived every day. There's a weird thing that happens in your 30s. And I am just convinced, like, time sort of made sense to me through my 20s. And then like 30s hit and time just goes on this weird, it's not even like it goes faster. It's like it doesn't even exist. It's like all of a sudden you're like blink and you're like looking at yourself going, wait a minute. Wait. No. Wait, give me a sec. 38 and 44. No, none of these numbers make sense anymore. That's been a hard one. So we were talking about writing
Yes.
the last time, and I wanted to discuss this more because I feel like for disabled people especially, that is one thing I keep hearing people say they want to do, and they just don't know where to start. And the other thing I hear is, I'm not creative. And let me just tell you, PSA, yes, you are. You just haven't done that muscle. Creativity is a muscle. It's not a born gift. You are not born creative because we all are born creative. We're all born scientists. We're all born artists. You just haven't used that muscle, or you were traumatized to not use it. So you're going to start with the question, what if? And you're just going to keep asking that question until it gets sillier and sillier and sillier until it just feels like a normal thing to ask. And then you'll start being creative. I want to talk to you about like how you decided to start writing your book, what the process looks like for writing a book when you're disabled. If there's like any, like I use Scrivener. I'm still not sure if that's the right choice or not, but that's the tool I use. And I use a lot of speech to text when my hands don't work. And the only thing I'll use AI for is editing. That's been, yeah, and even that isn't as good as I was hoping it would be. I actually
No.
did stop using it because I realized the writing was getting worse with their
Yeah.
suggestions.
Yeah.
Writing aid, right? Did you use Pro Writing Aid?
I have not used ProWrite. I don't. I feel like such an atypical writer. Like I don't feel like I take a lot of how do I explain? I've been writing since I was like 6 years old.
Yeah,
So like
same.
I've wanted to be an author my whole life. I wanted to do books. Like I've written numerous books, self-published various different ways throughout my whole life. I don't feel like I'm a very traditional writer in a lot of ways, and I don't know. I don't use a lot of the software and a lot of things that a lot of people use, and I don't know why. Some of it would probably be really beneficial. I just don't.
I think there's a point where just learning it kills the creativity, and having too many choices is just it stops your brain.
I think that's a good part of it because I like hear about these things and I go, oh yeah, that sounds really cool. Like I hear Scrivener, first of all, Scrivener always had a little bit of a higher price tag for me that I wanted to pay. Um, but I hear of like Grammarly and all these things. And I'm like, okay, these sound cool, but then I get too many alerts, or I get too many like things where I'm like, I'm too not focused on the writing itself. I'll worry about it later, and then I never worry about it later.
So what do you do? Do you just like long write it in a notebook and then type it? Or do you just go right to the typing?
So I basically just go right to the typing. I'm currently using Google Docs. I don't like the fact that I'm using Google Docs, but I haven't found a better software that I like.
Just
Okay, I'll try it.
I'll
But
show you if you want. But like
yes,
if Google Docs is it's the same thing. It's literally the
okay.
same thing except easier.
Cool. Yeah, I like Google Docs except for the fact that I know that like the AI scrapes your work, and I don't like that part of it, obviously. But I haven't been able to like drag myself away from that ecosystem. But I digress. So I just write. Basically, my writing process is like it's been so long since I've started a new book, which is kind of tricky because like I want to start a new book, but I'm very emotionally attached to the one I'm writing right now, so I can't exactly like separate myself and drag myself away from it. But I don't know. I think the most important part is just getting your thoughts on the page. You are going to go through 12,000 drafts, and you're gonna like go through all of your drafts at one point and go, "That's shit. That is terrible. Why did I ever think that was good?" But it's part of your growth. And
Yep.
like, if you don't ever write, you're never like, if you don't ever put words on the page, you are never going to write a book. And so it doesn't matter, like, if you keep looking at that sentence going, I hate that sentence, just let it sit there. You can come back to it later, just get your thoughts on the page.
That's
Because
brilliant.
I'm like, it doesn't matter how terrible you think it is, or like, if you're like, oh, I don't know, this scene isn't exactly how I want it, or like, this doesn't sound right, that's going to happen. Like, it happens to me. I've been writing for forever, and I still go to look at things and I go, that's not right, but I'll come back to it later, you know? Because if you just stop on like two sentences, that's all you're going to have. You know, and it's really easy to get a mental block and go, oh, I'm not good at this, or I'm not a good writer, or I'm not, whatever. But you just have to go for it. You have to learn, and you have to like reread your draft 1,000 times to go, this is why it doesn't make sense, or I like this better. Like it's just practice.
Works. But I'm wondering how you handle is like I used to be a pantser, which means like you just
Mhm.
like discover the story as you write it. And that was so much fun.
Yes.
And then I got older and I can't remember plot points anymore. So now I'm trying to be like something in between just so I can remember what hey, you need to lay breadcrumbs for this plot point over here. And that's where Scrivener became helpful to me, was because I needed to like be able to write out of order so I could keep track of what was going on where. So I'm
Yeah.
curious how you keep all the plot points in order, because if I remember correctly, your stories have multiple characters with
Yes.
multiple plot points in magical systems that you at least have to understand all the rules for. And I'm
Yes.
just curious, like as a sick person who's on
Mhm.
meds and dealing with a lot and dealing with chronic pain and also
Mhm.
living in this universe with all sorts of chaos being thrown at you, how do you keep everything organized in your head so that you don't forget major plot points?
Okay. Straight up organization, not my strong point.
Sorry, that was a
So
cackle, not a laugh. My fault.
So no, it's okay. So I used to be a big pantser, right? Like, and I'm transitioning more into being a plotter. So what I did for the first book, I just kind of pantsed all of it. I'm not gonna lie to you, but writing the second book, I realized I need a lot more organization, and I need like to put down on my plot points, right, and figure out what they're gonna do. And what I did is I just opened a Google Doc. I said, here, like, I just started writing out points that needed to happen, not necessarily in like chapter order or like
Yep.
anything. I just said, here are plot points that need to happen, and like what characters' reactions to those points would be. And it got really messy. Like I had a Google Doc that was like 20 pages long, and everything was kind of everywhere. And if you're more organized than me, if you have your systems together, it'll probably make more sense. Because at the end of it, I was kind of like, where does this go? But I don't know. Like, I like to think about the scenes that go on in my head, right? The things that I know are going to happen. And I just say, okay, these are going to happen. I can write like the fluffier stuff, the scenes in between as they come, you know? And I've always been a big, like, you don't have to write your book in order
How
component.
do you do that on just like, because I know I do it on Scrivener because they allow
Mhm.
you to, like, you can see on the side, it's like, here's your act one, act two, act three, and then you have all your chapters. And then you can just go, oh, I need a chapter here. And you press a plus sign and it gives you a text in that one space. And even if you aren't ready to write it, you could just put this scene, this is what happens in the information part. You could be like, okay,
Mhm.
so this is where the person does this and this and this. And then you have the card there. And you can even lay out the whole thing in cards before you start writing.
Okay, that
And
sounds
you
kind of
can
nice.
drag and drop the cards. So that's how I barely can handle it from there. And that's a
Mhm.
lot of good stuff. How do you do that on just a document?
So I have like, okay, this is why I said I need to figure out a better system because I do have like 12 different copies of my manuscript, but I usually have like one main manuscript that I'm writing, and then I'm like, okay, this is like the formal one, right? The like one that I'm going to use and like have just the book in. But I'll have another doc on the side that'll have different scenes written in it. And so I might have like, okay, I know I want this to be around chapter five, and I'll just title it chapter five. Right? Write the story. And then as the story is coming together, I just kind of like copy paste piece them together,
Okay.
like not necessarily like the most organized system, but like it works, you know?
You sound like Elizabeth Gilbert. Like she does it on like little 3x5 cards because she and I are the same generation, and that's how we used to do
Mhm.
everything with 3x5 cards. And she says
Fair.
she just does the whole thing in the cards, and she just writes up the whole structure on these cards, lays it all out on her living room floor, and then just moves them around, like basically what you do on Scrivener, but in real
Mhm.
time. And then she keeps it all in a box with the research.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. That sounds basically the process just online. And I mean, I think like one of the biggest components that I've heard people run into is like they don't know how to start their story, and they feel like they have to like start at the beginning. And I get that. And for me, sometimes the beginning is the hardest part to write because you know how all of the stories gotta go. You know, you have this whole idea
Yeah.
in your head, and you're like, oh, I want my characters to do this and that and this, and how to end this way. You know, great. But then you sit there and you're like, I know the first couple sentences have to have this hook. They got to be engaging. They got to draw the reader in. How do I get there? And so a lot of times I'll leave my beginning for the end because once you have the rest of the
Ooh.
story figured out, you know, once you've written all the like. I know when I started writing a book, I have like three or four like really vivid scenes in my head, and maybe that's just because I'm like a really imaginative, like I can see the things in my head. But I always had like those couple of scenes, and before I started like writing out of order, I would like rush my entire book to just get to those scenes, or I quit writing it because I was like, oh, those scenes are gonna be like 20 chapters, and I have to write all that stuff in before. And then I went, why don't I just write those chapters now? Why don't I write those scenes now while they're vivid in my head, and then I can you know, write around them because that way I'm not rushing like the whole third of the book to get there, and then I read the like first third of the book and I go, "This is why did I waste my time writing this? Like, this isn't how I would have written it to begin with."
I love that. And I think it's like, it's almost like this weird work ethic that a lot of writers have where it's like, well, I can't write the thing I'm desperately like, though it got me excited to write the book because I must go in order. Is like, oh
Mhm.
no, no, this should be joyful. There's
Yeah.
a writer on YouTube, and I've never really read her books, but I love her. She's almost an MFA class, like, and it's free. And she's like one of my favorite writers as far as just like giving advice. And her name's Abby Emmons. And what she said about it was writing the blurb first. If you write the blurb first, you've almost structured yourself into like how the story is going to go out and down, and you already have your hook. And you have your blurb done, which is my least favorite part of writing a book. Like, I could be the smartest person in the world. You put me on an elevator pitch, I'm like, hey, I like the color green. And I think I've read a book before, but I couldn't tell you what any of them were.
It's relatable. I spent so long crafting my like blurb, and I went, "Ooh, this is harder than writing the book itself. How do you condense a whole novel into like a paragraph?"
Hate the question. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. I was writing a novel. I work on it every day. Well, what is it about?
Yep, yep. And then they hit you with the "tell me in one sentence," and I'm like, "Tell me you've never written a book."
Yeah,
Yep.
in one sentence. Sure. Read the book
Yeah.
or else. There you go. That's your sentence.
Exactly. No, I mean, I think like every writer's gonna have their own preference for how they write the book. Like,
Mhm.
and it's gonna take you, like, especially if you are setting out to write your very first novel. Like, this is kind of the first thing you've written. It's gonna take you some time to figure out how you like to write, and your process is also going to evolve. Like, that's something I've learned a lot, especially like before I was sick. I was like a huge pantser, and I could write all day, every day, like on my phone doing. I would write so much, so often, but now that I have like limited energy, limited time to like do those things, I've had to be a lot more structured. And that's why like I have to like before I start writing anymore, I just set down like the plot points that I need to have, like I was saying. And I don't know, I have a lot more structure now. And like it's okay to, evolve and have your writing process change. This is for you.
Yep, sorry, here you go.
Oh.
This is why nothing gets written right now. This is like the reason why this book is never going to get finished. What do you think about things like NaNoWriMo? Because I have yet to find someone who does not have a strong reaction to NaNoWriMo, leaving alone the current scandal around NaNoWriMo. But just as a
Okay.
general, and we can definitely discuss that in a minute, but I'm just thinking from a general concept, I actually ended up finding it helpful because I was so in my head about how to write a novel, about, oh my gosh, I'll never get done. I'm not good enough. But when you put it into a 30-day condensed, it doesn't matter, just get it on the page. It actually got me to finish my first book because I was never going to actually, as I was just going to sit and obsess and edit forever and never get to the end. So I'm just curious if you had a similar feeling, and we can definitely discuss the shade of it all after.
Yeah. So I think like I've heard a lot of people say that's really helpful, and I'm like glad that's helpful for them, and I'm really glad that it's getting people into writing and like writing their first book because like the first book you write is the most intimidating and like the hardest.
Yes.
Solely because like you're like, how do I do this? And then once you finish it, you're like, okay, I kind of got a hang of this. Like,
Yeah.
So I'm glad. Like, I think it's a good, useful tool for people in that way. I found out about NaNoWriMo years after I finished, writing my first couple of books. So like I set out to do it a couple years. I've never successfully completed it. I'm not gonna lie to you.
That's fair.
I'm not gonna lie to you there. Just because like whenever I sat down to do it, I felt like it was the worst time. Like it was the worst time of month for me to do like
What
this.
I said in November,
I'm like,
obviously there is not a single woman in this group or someone who's like woman level responsible in this group that
mhm,
made a choice who's like, yeah, the month before everyone comes together that we are responsible for like all of the joy and cleaning and cooking. Let's do that.
exactly.
Let's do that. And
I
all
was
the
like, you
kids
could
are
have
in
done it.
school. I'm like, and this is for teenagers too. They're in school. Why wouldn't you do this in July? Like when
Yeah,
they're bored out of their minds, they don't have anything to do. They're wondering what to do. Why would you put this right before the quarter's over? Right when they have all the homework due, right before the winter break? Like, why? It's not good for anyone.
truly. I'm like, so I think I tried it for like 1 or 2 years, and then I went, this is so terribly like planned for my life right now that I cannot do it. And then I just kind of went, it exists, and it's like I'm just not gonna attempt to do it because I have written a novel in 30 days before. I've written one in like shorter time frames. And like that's fine. But for me, like I find that I like to like take my time because especially right now, I published my first book, right? Like I self-published that and I like still have it available for sale. I'll tell you all about the tea of like Kingdom Spark and why my publishing journey is where it is. But God, I lost my tangent. I'm sorry.
You're doing just fine. I mean, you were talking about how you've already written your first novel and how like Nano just is not a thing that you really want to finish, but you were able to do that in a time frame, which I am so curious how without like an entire world structuring that 1 month, you were like, yeah, I can do that in a month. No problem. Like forget like Susanna Clark taking 10 years to write a book. I could do it in a month. I'm so curious.
To be fair, but when I say that, I was like teenager, like preteen teenager, like, and my novels back then were not quite as developed as they are now. Still very much in the young writer, less story building, less character development. So they were a lot more bare bones when I was doing that.
A
So
little better.
yeah, I'm like, don't beat yourself up. I don't know that I could do that now with like how much I put. I guess I could if I spent 8 hours every day doing it. If I put that much effort into it. But I find that I like to take my time because when I rush and like I look back at the work that I did on my first novel, and there were things that I would have done completely different. There are things like there are paragraphs that I'm like, oh, why did I write it that way? Oh God, like I hate that I used that word instead of that word. Like
Yep.
I mean, we're always growing as artists and authors and like that kind of thing. So I think it's normal to reflect back on your work and do that. But I do prefer to like take my time, especially when I'm writing books that I like truly deeply care about, just because it gives me that time and space to reflect on like what I've written in the past and make sure that it's like as good as I can get it at the moment.
I absolutely hear that. And, it's all about like what you can do at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When I said I was going to get a dog, and everyone's like, "It's the best idea ever," I knew who had never raised a puppy. I was like, instantly, you are not someone who's done this before. So, for writing, how do you share? When do you decide that you're going to share, even that you are writing a book? Because then you invite all the "how's it going" questions, various levels of interest, and not just interest in whether the book is being written, but hey, I have judgy people in my life who are like, oh, so, that smile. How do you decide you're ready to tell people that you're actually doing this project? Do you share the project? Do you do like first readers? How do you find those first?
Oh gosh. Okay. Great questions all around. Okay, I feel
I do this for a living.
no, I feel such terrible imposter syndrome
Oh
whenever
my
I
God.
talk writing.
For a minute.
Yeah,
Let's talk about that. Let's talk imposter syndrome for a sec.
yeah. Like I feel like I've really isolated myself away from a lot of writing communities. In part, like that hasn't necessarily been intentional, but I feel such bad imposter syndrome when I talk to other writers and they seem to have like their shit together. And I'm like, I can write a book. I can do that. I don't know that like I do well with the rest of the everything that goes into like marketing or like getting readers or like any of that stuff or like the rest of the culture that goes into writing a book. I can write. I know I can do that. The rest, I have like I don't know. I kind of hate that I isolated myself away from a lot of writing communities and a lot of just people. But I feel so intimidated and so scared being in those groups.
Yeah. Why do you feel intimidated being scared in those groups? Are we talking about like in college writing groups? Or are we talking like those like Parks and Rec writing groups?
Yeah, I'm talking about like online, like you'll join like I was in various like Discord servers for a while where like we would all do writing sprints and like I would meet like when I was doing marketing for my book, I was like on Instagram and TikTok and like everywhere and like everyone was writing a book, so we'd all beta read for each other. We'd all, like
Mm.
do different and like we'd do writing sprints and all of those kinds of things. So just kind of like the online community that I met. And I think I feel like first of all, I don't write a lot of like the genre that's popular at the moment, which is like very romance, book talky, like dark
I don't know.
romance.
Popular stuff is scaring me. Like the whole like dark romance book talk. I'm like, y'all need to stop watching. Did you watch CSI as a child? Because I can't imagine how else this became a thing.
Truly, I'm like so. First of all, I've been in some groups where like that is seen as like the gold standard of what you are supposed to write and what you do, and then I'm like, I
Mm.
don't do that. And so then maybe it's probably very self-imposed. It's probably very like probably no one else is judging me as hard as I'm judging me.
Judges us as hard as we judge us. That's back to that imposter syndrome thing. Like when you hear people like Stephen King saying imposter syndrome, you're like, yeah, yeah, I guess we're all screwed.
Yeah, yeah. And so I just, and also like, I feel like there can be a lot of like, there's some really good, like, I have a lot of good author friends and people who I like thoroughly enjoy talking to about writing, and we write all the time. But I've also run into like it feeling very kind of elitist as well.
Yeah.
And like, there's some like writing courses and like, there's like a whole writing studio where I live where like I really wanted to join, but hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to drop on courses. And I'm like,
Yeah.
who has this money? And second of all, it feels like you're judged by like how you publish your book, right? Or like what kind of deal you get within the publishing world, what you write about, and like who you are as a person. And like as someone who has never fit into any box, really, I feel very like I don't want to go into these groups where I at least feel as if I'm being judged based on all of that. And I mean, I think when we look at like the publishing world in general, there are like I have not forayed into a lot of the traditional publishing world, so this is a lot of just what I've seen on the outside. But like I've been told of authors who have had to like cut a third of their book
Yeah.
because like the publisher wants them to, and like that third is like a queer romance or like a trans coming of age story. It's like something of very of substance, just because they don't think it's going to sell so well.
I
And
don't think people understand this about the publishing industry is they're not talking about what's good. They're talking about what will sell. It's not if you're getting rejected, it's not because the book is bad. It's because they don't think it will sell.
yeah, and for me, like writing, I would love to be a full-time author. I would love for that to be the thing that I do. But I don't also want to like create art and create work that doesn't mean stuff to me. And I knew the book that I'm currently writing, it's not going to sell, like because it's a very mix up of genres. It's kind of like a really dark dystopian novel, and dystopia isn't doing too hot right now as a genre. Like
You know,
I don't
is this under nonfiction right now?
I know. I was like, I don't blame people for not wanting to read it because
I'm so sorry, but I won't. Yeah.
I don't blame you. I really don't. And so but it's a story that's important to me and the characters are
Yeah.
important to me. And so I want to write it. And like, I knew I wasn't going to get a traditional deal. I self-published because I knew that. And I wasn't going to put all my energy into that. And like, there's another book that I'm writing that's a lot more mass market and like, that's very fantasy, like fantasy romance-esque. So I know like, and I might pursue a trade deal for that because I know it has a much bigger, broader market. But I also didn't want to go into spaces with other writers where I was going to feel judged based on the choices that I made and the fact that I wanted to write something that wasn't sellable. Because I still think like, even if it's just art that I enjoy or like I and like three people enjoy, it's still important. It's still an important story.
I cannot agree more. It is very important. And that's how we get these stories. Like, otherwise, we just end up with the same stuff from the same kinds of writers. And, if we're talking about like the dark, well, we end up with the same writers who we eventually find out it's not fiction, it's telling on themselves.
Yeah.
And sorry, the Neil Gaiman thing, I know we're like what 6 months into that and it still hurts. Like I'm still in full trauma over that one.
I've like, trust me, I've tried to like write dark romance or erotica for a quick buck because I'm like, I know I could do it, but I don't have my heart and soul into it. And like, kudos if you do, kudos if that's the thing you enjoy to write, whatever, like, that's up to you. It's just not what I enjoy writing. And I've tried to do it just because I'm like, okay, I'm broke and I know this sells and I know I could do it, but I can't bring myself to like, it's not something I enjoy. And I don't want to make this like the one craft, the one thing that I truly like pour my heart into and like I get stuff from. I don't want to make that until just purely about money.
If you're okay with that, there's a
Yeah.
thing I'd love to talk about. And
Yeah.
it's the responsibility of the artist. And no one likes this conversation because I keep seeing, and it's usually a very specific type of artist that I see buck against this and tell me that as an artist, they must have full freedom to say horrible things, to do certain salutes, show some of the most foul and horrible abuses, and show it from a sexy voyeuristic standpoint. I mean, I'm very into storytelling, be that in like visual mediums of film or writing, but I keep hearing one particular type of person fight against this idea of responsibility. But we have the data, and the data is very clear that while we've always had violence against female presenting people, the violence went through the roof once we started having horror movies in the 80s, those horror movies, the specific slasher films, not the like, kind of cutesy 1960s, like, oh, you can see the fishing line and here's an alien. They had an actual point behind it. I'm talking about the slasher films, and the rise of murder and torture of women went through the roof. And you cannot tell me that we don't have a responsibility. And we're just seeing now in book talk, it's called Daddy's Little Girl. I certainly have never read it. I do not ever want to read it. But we're seeing people really push this envelope and normalize things. Let's go something bigger. Let's go with Game of Thrones. Why they felt the need for nonstop incest and normalizing incest puts very particular people in danger. Adding in assault puts people in danger, and it wasn't in the book. I'm just wondering where you like, as we're talking about like, yeah, we could write these dark fantasies to make money. Yeah, but we're also putting some really horrible things in the world. And I'm not talking about all erotica. Yeah. I'm not a prude. There are some incredible erotica out there. There's some great, like very graphic, but consensual. And I think those things are great. I'm just really concerned about these, like, let's put our darkest fantasies out here and normalize it to a point where some people are like, Hey, let's take that one step further.
No, I mean, I think it's a really interesting and like somewhat nuanced conversation, right? Like
Mhm.
in that,
Which is why it's hard to have on social media.
yeah. So I like artists like have responsibility in their work and like how we discuss things because of course we can have topics like sexual assault or like all
Mhm.
of these like darker topics in books, but I think we have to be responsible in how we talk about them. And like we don't glamorize because like I have all of the dark things in my book, right? And I think it can be like I don't fault anyone because I think it can be a really tricky line, right, to write about these things, especially if they're not things like you have personally gone through. But
Yeah.
it can be a really tricky line to like see is am I talking about this respectfully or am I kind of
Mm,
like romanticizing or glamorizing this, right? And I think it's important to like get other people's perspectives. So that's why you have like sensitivity readers who can like read over your stuff and who are being like paid for their time and effort in like being like, okay, this is like this part was written respectfully, this part isn't, this is how you fix this, right? And so I think it's important to get those perspectives. And it is the responsibility of an author, like if you're writing this for yourself, fine, whatever. Like you don't have to go to all those lengths, right? If you're not going to share it, but if you're going to share it and then like make money off of it, I think it is your responsibility as an author to make sure what you write about is respectful. It's not your audience job to like tell you after the fact, hey, this sucked, right? Like this was not written about respectfully. And then if you're trying to write like these darker, like erotica romantic themes, like I'm probably not the best person to ask about this, but like I do have a lot of background in like I was a sex educator for Planned Parenthood and like I did that for a couple of years and I have seen like I worked in like work with survivors and things like that. I think it's a tricky conversation to have because
it
as
is.
a as a
Don't have the money for sensitivity. Like I have one novel I've shelved
Mhm.
because I have multiple characters who are not my ethnicity and who are going through things that I have not gone through. And I'm very clear, I cannot publish this unless I can get those sensitivity reader. I've done the research. I've done so much research on these time periods, but I also don't feel comfortable publishing it until I have people from those communities looking at it, and I don't have the money right now. So it is a limit. It is a responsibility. Responsibility is expensive in time and resources.
Yeah. And I'm like, and it sucks. And I mean, I think there are like,
Yeah, it makes me really upset about like all of these like 15th century men who were just able to say whatever the fuck they wanted and often very badly. And like I am
yeah,
not a fan of most Victorian literature. Graduate school killed me on Victorian literature, but I do want a Victorian writer's wife. That would be so like the idea that I could just, Victor Hugo it and just write a bunch of nonsense and have my wife sit down and turn it into a beautiful novel. Not George Lucas. George Lucas did this. Everyone who saw any of his movies, American Graffiti, all the way to Star Wars, was like, until his wife, the editor, got a hold of it, it was not watchable. I want
oh
that
my
wife.
God, truly.
A great husband, but I want that wife because I
That's
feel
fair.
and they did all the communications with editors. They did all of the like these women are the only reasons that these stories got out there. Like yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
Internal. Do you ever have like the Paris Paloma song, Labor just running through your head on loop, like
yes,
nonstop, like every time you're like pink pilling something, you're just hearing her voice in the back of your head with that chorus. Yeah.
yes, yes. But yeah, I'm like, I think it is ultimately like the responsibility of an author of what they create. And like, yeah, we're all human. Yeah, we all make mistakes. And I don't know that we're going to get it right every single time. But I think it's in our responsibility to do the best that we can. And
Yeah.
like, if you're talking about erotica and like things like that, where the purpose is to, provide pleasure for people and like, write that kind of stuff, I think like you can write like these darker themes. Like that is a thing. There is a market for that, and there are people who are going to really enjoy that. But I think you also have to be very clear in your like also outside of your writing, right?
But one of the best examples I can give for this is disability. So we have a lot of healthy people who try to write disabled characters because they want the inspiration porn, they want the sadness. And I think that's probably one of the easier ways to have this discussion is to talk about disability in media, like the Me Before You, where all we want as disabled people is to die as soon as possible so that our poor loved ones can remember us fondly and they won't be stuck caring for us or I'm in a wheelchair. All I've ever wanted is to get out of my wheelchair and dance. I mean, like all of this inspiration bullshit. And
Mhm.
you could look at it and go, well, it's silly, it's stupid, write your own book. It's like, yeah, but I don't have the money and I don't have the voice or like the eyes on me that Glee had or that Me Before You
Mhm.
had. And those things shape people and they shape policy. And when you don't have a disabled person in your life, and that's the thing you see or hear, you go, that's what it's like. And then you make assumptions. And I think that maybe that's where at least that's where I was like trying to spin myself to is that there's responsibility, but one of the biggest responsibilities are you creating assumptions? Are you creating
Yeah.
an assumption this is okay or to be normalized, or this is what someone who I don't even know, I don't have any experience with this would think or react or do, or what's their inner desire? Like, I think you actually have, like, that's the biggest responsibility in my head is like, that could really shape ideas.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely agree. And like making sure like the media that you consume, like because you obviously as an author you do research for your characters and but making sure like the research that you do is accurate and is
Mm,
from other like disabled people or other people that group that you're
that
actually researching and not just like oh this university put out this fact sheet about
like autism speaks. I know everything. Thank you, Sia.
truly.
Yeah, like make sure that you're using actual resources that the disability or that group says is the group. Because man, Ehlers-Danlos supports, that is not where you go for information on us, my friend. Like, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, we're just like we're trauma bonding over our experience. The medical groups that are supposed to advocate for us, but instead are like, it's not that bad. They're fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, don't go to your random doctor and be like, so what are your thoughts on like how do these people think? Like, you
I
like
totally understand wheelchair life.
mhm.
Totally get
Yeah.
it. Yeah, 4 weeks in a wheelchair. I get it. I had like a kidney stone. I get level 10. So, yeah. So with those communities, I think like one of the things that I found really helpful, and because I was writing about a First Nations, oh goodness, I want to say boarding school, and I feel like that's just not an okay phrasing for what happened to First Nations in Canada and in the
Yeah.
United States. But this one character came from Canada, and I watched all the documentaries. I read books from people who had been within a generation of that experience. But going on to, and this is back before Facebook was truly like we knew it was evil. This is a minute ago, but going in and trying to find groups of things because, like, when I was trying to find something about narcolepsy, it's like, okay, I've got to go to actual support groups for narcolepsy and then introduce myself and ask if it's okay if I silently be there. Like, that's another thing is please be respectful in spaces that aren't yours, especially if you're
Mhm.
like this color and you're like, hey, I need to write about a First Nations person or about, from any of these other groups that are like not this color. Be fucking respectful. Like you're there. Anyone who's willing to talk to you about these issues and explain things to you, that is an honor. That is to be respected. You are to be quiet and to take notes. Like this is that you are not the main character in this moment. Like this is someone respected you enough and trusts you enough, and that needs to be met with its own respect.
Yeah, for sure. And like definitely do your research before you go into these groups too, because like the amount of posts that I see on like Reddit that are like, I'm writing a book about a wheelchair user. Can I do and I'm like, we have like 27,000 posts about this. Please read it. Go
Try
through
that
those.
first. Yeah.
Right? Like do your research before you go. Like asking up for people is fine. Like asking for help is fine. But definitely do so respectfully and like
I feel like that's another really important part is I feel like there's almost like, well, you all told us we need to do this, so you owe me your time. I
mhm.
don't owe anyone my time. That's
Yeah.
I mean, I owe my kids my time. I owe my pets my time. And unless you are fluffy, furry, or came out of my body, no, you do
Yeah.
not. You are not
Always willing
that.
to help, but
It sounds nice. Like
yeah.
I cannot tell you how many times I've been approached to help people on things where it was just met with such rudeness and misogyny. That's always my favorite.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had that happen on the podcast where someone's like come onto our like little Facebook group and be like, I want to start my disability podcast. I'm like, oh my god, yay! Start your disability. What can I do to help? And then like,
Mhm.
see, I'm not fucking with you at all. This person was like, yeah, I want to talk to the people who started Invisible Not Broken. I'm like, I started it 7 years ago. It's a network now. We have other people
Mhm.
who are also in charge now, but I started it. Do you still want my help? No. I want the person who's in charge. I'm like, I wish you the best. If you change your mind, let me know.
Truly. Ugh.
But like that kind of energy of coming at like, or like you owe this time to like explain this, or arguing with me about what a wheelchair life is like is really cute.
Mhm.
I'm like, the only person who gets to argue with me about what wheelchair life is like is someone who's permanent wheelchair. Then they absolutely welcome to argue because that's not my experience. My experience is ambulatory, and so yeah, I'm totally willing to listen to someone who's like got it another time up. But if you
Mhm.
spent like a week in a wheelchair, or a month in a wheelchair, because you broke your leg, please don't do
Yeah.
that. And don't
Yeah.
claim heritage where you don't absolutely know you have heritage. Because I've seen that too, of people going into First Nations groups going, well, I took the
No.
23andMe. It's like, my,
It's like I have 1%. No.
your grandmother was
Same.
not a Cherokee princess. I promise you. I swear to you. I swear on everything. That's not what happened.
Yep.
And that's hard for people because I think that it does come from a place of in the United States, we're such a weird space, right? We're all immigrants except for certain populations. Almost all of us come from somewhere else. And none of us have our own real history or stories. Like for me, my family came here during the Holocaust. So we have no records. I don't know my history. I don't know these people. I don't know what they experienced even, except the broad strokes. And I think it comes from this place of wanting some sort of history and community. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. And that's like my best guess is that someone's like, but I really want to belong somewhere with a community because we are missing community in this country.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would agree. Like, I definitely see that for sure. I don't like,
And communities too. It's like we're looking at the disability community and the gatekeeping. It just like, when you're talking about like, I don't want to be in these writing groups. I'm like, I don't want to be in the disability groups. Like that
that's fair.
level of like the suffering Olympics. If you could take the gold medal, I'm good. Like I don't need to prove to you. I mean, I need to prove to my pain doctor I'm suffering. I need to prove to my physical therapist. I don't need to prove to some random person on the internet that I'm suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Like, I think we all just need to like take it down a notch. We don't need to all compete with each other or like, try to gatekeep our communities. We can all have a spot you know, unless of course it's like a cultural, minority group, then there's, yeah. But, like,
Basic understandings of what people need. Like all
yeah,
things are not equal and we're not looking for equal, we're looking for equity. And that means that if you're seeing like an all like minority group space and you're like, why can't I be a part of that? I should be allowed in. No, this is about equity, not equality. Equality would mean, yes, you should be allowed in. But equity
mhm,
means this is a need for this group. It is not a need for your safety. So
yeah,
that's equity. It's like, if you have a wheelchair or you're like, hey, equality for disability means, we're going to put ramps up. It's like, well, that's great, but the deaf person didn't get what they need. And we're like, equity, not equality.
yes.
So are you doing like book tours? Like how are you managing your physicality with getting the word out for your books? Or is that just not, you're just like, I am writing because I love writing. If someone wants to buy it, that's great. Because I am, and this is strictly advice for me right now.
Mhm.
I'm stealing advice because I'm so fucking tired, and social mediaing for author is almost as exhausting as social mediaing for podcasts.
Yeah.
I don't have the time to think of witty, cute ways to get people to want to just read the blog post, let alone read the book.
Yep. So currently right now I'm not doing anything really to get out there and I'm like, do you have time, energy to hear my like self-publishing?
Yes.
Okay, so originally, right? So we're talking about my like new adult dystopian novel, Fires in Their Wake for this one, right? Just to give some context. And this is the book that I didn't want to go the traditional route for because it's not that mass marketable. Okay, but I still wanted to like have physical copies, have this in my hand, like be able to sell this as my published book, right? And have this like on my author resume, right? And so I decided, like, I didn't want to go in the Amazon ecosystem because for anyone who's not familiar in self-publishing, there are a couple of routes you can go. And one of them is through like Kindle direct publishing, and like, oh God, Kindle Unlimited and like that route. And then you're kind of stuck in the Amazon
You
ecosystem.
can also lose money in there too.
Yes,
They can charge you if people read your book and return it.
yes. And so I didn't want to do that route because I have a lot of quarrels with Amazon and just that system in general. And so I went through Ingram Spark, which is the biggest indie publisher and also distributor of indie books, right? And the books in general, because this is like people purchase like library books and like booksellers purchase their books through Ingram Spark. And it was great. They published my book. They take a really hefty fee. I will tell you that. They take like 65% of whatever you're making. And so I was priced my physical copies. This all kind of ties back into what I'm doing as an author because this totally screwed me over.
65 sounds like actually less than what you take home as a traditionally published writer.
Yeah. So they so basically, long story short, Ingram screwed me over, but I want to talk about why. if that's cool.
Yes. I mean, because everyone who's thinking about this, like to just get an agent is exhausting and we're sick and tired. To find the right agent, like I think most of us are like, anyone says yes. Yes. Oh, there's a lot that can go wrong with choosing the wrong agent. There's a lot that can go wrong with choosing the wrong publishing house. You can lose control over everything. And if you really care about your characters, like we had just discussed, if they feel like a queer love story at this point in time is just too scary for them to publish, they can legally remove that.
Like 5 years. I'm like, you probably spent 5 years trying to get there, and then you're told in the editing room, you have to cut this out, otherwise you're not going to sell your book. So you have to make that impossible choice of like, I cut out this part of my book, or I don't get sold. But yeah, I went through Ingram Spark because basically they offered like, oh, you can sell both an ebook and you can sell a physical book, and with the physical book, we can distribute it to libraries, we can distribute it to bookstores, so you can have your book on shelves. And I did, right? I had my book in like a bunch of little bookstores around Chicago. That was great. They ordered it. I got to do like some book signings. That was really cute. That was cool. That like fulfilled some of my author fantasies, right? But I want to tell you, I was selling this book for like the physical copy for $22, which was a little pricey. Or wait, no, I lied. Sorry, I was selling it for 18. Sorry, my head's getting all confused sometimes. But I was selling it for $18, which was like basically competitive pricing, right? Around you can buy a paperback book for around there. But I was only taking home 95 cents for each copy sold. And I was also selling digital books. They were $3, and I was taking home like $1.95. So if people are buying the digital copy, I was making a lot more money. If they're buying the physical copy, not making money at all. So I sold this book for about a year. This round of
Did Sparks do any level of marketing for you, or were you in charge of doing the editing, the visuals, the cover, the marketing? They just printed it.
They just printed it. They just printed it and shipped it out to bookstores.
65% for just printing and shipping.
Yep. So I did all
It's a good business model.
Yep, I did all of the marketing. I made my own cover. I paid for editing. I did everything. They do offer those services as like add-ons. I've heard that that's not recommended, and they also do charge hefty fees, like I think more than the average price, but they offer those if you want to do that. Here's the thing. I sold this for a year. I made like $105. Don't quote me on the numbers. I have a whole TikTok about all of the specifics that y'all can go look at some point if you're interested. But I made about $100 from this book over a copy over the course of a year. And I sold
doing stuff. You were marketing, you were doing book signings. It wasn't like you were just like sitting there. You were trying to sell.
Yes. And I sold like 100 copies of this book. So I made about $100. I think it's more like 95, but $95. Anyways, I did fall off on the marketing. I fell off on like a lot of like the social media stuff kind of after I published it and like had that day. I did a lot of like pre-release stuff, but I kind of fell off afterwards just because life got in the way. I moved, I got sick, I got like all this stuff, right? So like I don't blame the low numbers on like anyone but myself, but I did all right. Like I feel like 100 copies for an indie author is a pretty solid number. And that was all cool. That was all dandy. Ingram is really late when they release your paycheck. So you get them like 3, 4, 5, 6 months after you sell the copies. So I didn't see that money for a really long time. I just want to put that out there. You will not see your return on money for a really long time if you go that route. The issue came is this past November, which marked about a year after I published this. And I got an invoice from Ingram for like $350. And they said that they had received like 45 copies of my book, like 45 copies of my book had been returned. Now, nowhere in this invoice, nowhere in this thing was I told who purchased 45 copies of a book, because I knew each individual bookseller and how many copies they bought. So I knew each one had maybe 3 or 4 copies on hand. They weren't buying 45 copies of an unknown indie author's book. Second of all, like, I just didn't know where these came from, who was returning them, because you have to realize that's almost half of the books I sold. And I'm not trying to say
Yep.
my book's perfect, doesn't need any returns, doesn't, like, whatever. I know, like, one of those was a legitimate return, right? Okay, fine, whatever. People don't like my book, that's fine. I'm not saying where is like half of those books come from? And after a lot of digging, I realized that it was most likely Amazon who purchased these books. They didn't sell. Like, they printed them or they had them shipped there in anticipation of me selling these copies. They then did not sell. And then Amazon returned them to Ingram. The issue here is that I had enabled returns. And the reason, like, you were told, like, all of the media I was seeing when I published my book told me to enable returns on these books, because otherwise, if you don't enable returns, that means, like, people who don't want your book, they go to a bookstore, they're able to return your book, right? If you don't allow that, you're not going to get sold. Your booksellers are not going to sell your book. Libraries aren't going to buy your book because you don't accept returns, and that's a big risk to them. So I enabled to have them printed and then have any returns destroyed. So that way I would only be paying for, like, if any books were, I'm sorry, I don't feel like I'm explaining this as clearly as I normally do, but this way, if any returns were accepted, I would only be paying the manufacturing cost of the book. So that would be coming out of my pocket, and I would be paying about $7.95 for those manufacturing costs. But that also means I would never see any of those returns. I would never see any pictures, any proof that there were returns. Right? So that means I don't have any proof that those 45 copies were actually ordered, like, sat anywhere and were destroyed. For all I know, they could just say, I have an invoice for $350. And while I'm not claiming that they're doing anything shady, I am saying that it's a really shitty process, because I am now having to pay like $7.95 for 45 books, right? It was money I wasn't anticipating. This having returns enabled was the only way for me to get this book into stores and anywhere and be able to do all of the cool author things that I think we all kind of dream of when we say we want to be an author. And I don't know, I think it sucks, because back when I published, which was like 2022, we were all told to enable these returns. Were we told that some outside entity would order 45 copies, or I've heard of authors going thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt because of this. So my story is like really minimal compared to theirs, but nowhere were we told there was going to be this outside entity that, orders a bunch of copies and then returns them and then screws us over because we have to pay, for the manufacturing cost of each book. And then we don't ever see those books again. And I
How
could.
else is Bezos going to go into space, though? I mean, we have to fund it's the ultimate
Exactly.
welfare. Him and Elon are the welfare queens. We need to support their ability, and I'm here to support their ability to go to Mars. I will do almost anything to get those two men to Mars.
Truly, please go on Elon's SpaceX ship and let him go up there. Let him do
I
it.
mean, Trump was saying he wanted to do it. I don't think we
Go.
should stand in the way. I mean, this is this man's dream. This is his make a wish. I feel like we need to do this for him.
Yeah, yeah.
Also, go check out the Titanic, my friends. You've got the money. Go, live your life. You got us, all paying for your life. Go do the best things, like go to Mars.
Mhm.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Talking to, like, they're like, we're gonna, like, it's such like a wealthy corporation thing of just like nickel and diming small businesses that can't fight back, small people that can't fight back, when it wouldn't even like click with them, like it wouldn't even be on their bottom line. Like Amazon would care about $350, but that's a month of medicine, that's doctor's visits, like.
Yep. And that's more than triple of what I ever made on this book. They took all the profits that I made, and now I never saw those. And I'm fortunate enough that my mom decided just to pay off those debts, because she was like, this is so bad. I hate, like, we were fighting. And the thing is also with like Ingram Spark, there is no customer service. There is zero customer service. So I personally would not recommend going with Ingram Spark to self-publish. There's actually a lot of different talks about lawyers and things, and I did get a lawyer involved for a hot minute. That didn't go anywhere, so don't get your hopes up.
It's like a class action issue.
I'm telling you, but I can't get anyone to care enough to take the case. Anyways, yeah. So this is all a long story for me to say I was screwed over. Even if I changed how I worked with Ingram. I didn't want to. This left a really bad taste in my mouth because there was also no way to dispute this. And I would like to just remind you, I never saw proof of who, what, where that these books ever were printed, ever existed. Right. And like they're just sitting in a landfill somewhere supposedly, and I just have to pay. Like, I get it. I get that I had to pay for the returns. And I'm not saying like I'm not partially responsible for this. I think it's a really shitty situation. And there isn't a lot of like transparency around this until you get into like serious trouble. And like there are so many authors. If you look up like Ingram Spark on TikTok, and like you'll see authors talking about this situation, because I had hundreds of authors in my comments talking about how they've been screwed over by Ingram Spark. And this is all to say, like, there is no clear cut way that I would recommend self publishing right now that I know of, because either you're going to be stuck in the Amazon ecosystem or you're going to be screwed by Ingram Spark. And there are other like smaller distributors or other smaller people that I've heard have worked great for people. I can't recommend them. I haven't tried them. There are also like smaller indie publishers who like work locally, who some are great, some I've looked into, others, you'll have to do your own research. So what I ended up doing, which I haven't seen like a lot of success from, but I also haven't been really marketing this, is I'm just releasing my books on Ko-Fi. That way I get all of the profits, right? Everything is already formatted. I already have the books all formatted, all written, all published. So I just took those documents, put them on Ko-Fi, and released them. Like, once you subscribe, you'll get a copy of like the ebook. I just send it over in like a Google Doc or a Google Drive thing. There you go. Yeah. And then you were free to download it onto your Kindle, your e-reader, your phone, however you want to do that. And then I'm releasing the second book as a serial, so I'm releasing like chapters weekly. In that way, like, yeah. Which I've been
That
preferring.
is really interesting. I was doing something like that on my blog. I'm not making. I've never tried to make money on it, but that's the idea of doing that in Kofi sounds really fascinating.
Yeah, I know that there are some like there are authors who are doing this who are really successful doing it. I just haven't built up enough of an audience or like people, and this is also what I'm debating about. I don't know that I'm writing the right book for this right now, so I'm debating about just transitioning into writing this more like fantasy-esque novel and seeing. I don't have a lot of success story for you. I wish I could tell you, yeah, this is how I made a bunch of money and this is how this works for me. I
I
don't.
think that there's a lot of those stories out there, and whether they're true or not is also a big question mark. I find a lot of value in the discussion of the process, and just learning about what's like working and not working, or what the experiences are. I think it's tremendously valuable. I actually had no idea about the Ingram Spark. I was considering it, and I'm very grateful to have had this conversation with you, because I will not. And the idea of like trying this out with Kofi, I think that's a really fascinating plan, because I think that you're right. At this point in time, anything with a corporation behind it, we have to be so eyebrow raised. Like we have Adobe that is like, we're stealing anything you put on Adobe, it's ours. We own it.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, we cannot, even like the corporations that are to help our creativity are stealing our creativity. So we have to be
Mm-hmm.
so out of the box right now on how we get our artwork, our writing, our games, our movies, anything that we've created. We have to be so careful how we're getting it out. And we have to think so far out of the box that I think this conversation is really important. Whether it's economically feasible or not, it's important to talk about the different options and experiences.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's also contributed a lot to like my own self doubt and everything. And like I feel like I was kind of forced to go this route. And I mean, I think it's equally valid. Like, I don't know. I grew up writing on Wattpad. Like that was my shit. I was such a good. If I could just brag, I went to Watty there. I
Yes.
kept my Wattpad account. I should have. Kind of mad I did it now. But like, I grew up on Wattpad. I wrote there all the time, and I loved the environment. I loved everything about it. And mind you, this was like a decade ago, so I don't know what the environment's like now. But I loved it back then, and I loved like releasing chapter by chapter and having people in the comments and just like hyping each other up around books. And I miss that a lot. And I don't know, I just feel like a lot of writing is so competitive and elitist a lot of the time. And like there are certainly groups you can find where like it's not the case. I just haven't successfully found that. At least consistently. I don't know. I think it's a weird landscape to be in because I would love to be a full-time author. I'd love to make this my job. I would love for that to be the case, but it's not feasible for so many people. And I don't have a fancy course that I'm selling or anything. Like I used to coach people all the time on how to like self-publish through Ingram, and I had all those courses, and I feel terrible that I recommended people after I went through this. So now I'm like, I don't know. I don't have advice apparently.
You're right. Like you have a job, you have a wife, you have a life. You have to keep a house going, and you also have a chronic illness, which is a full working time job. So when and how are you finding the time to get your writing done?
So I'm fortunate, right? In the fact that like my job currently is just doing like content creation and writing, right? Because the state of the employment right now, whew, messy. I can't hold a full time job like a traditional 9 to 5 job. So I'm very lucky in like I work from home. I have my own schedule. So I just carve out time for myself. I know Tuesday, Wednesdays are like my filming social media days, but like Monday, Thursday are my writing days. And that's not feasible for everyone. Like there are people who have full time jobs, 9 to 5s. And I just got lucky in that I have the support system to be able to do this. And when I was working and doing this, trying to make it work, I would write at the weirdest times. Like I just would write on my phone, which is also why I like to Google Docs. Is like I would write in the car. I would write on the toilet. I would write while I was cooking dinner, and like a couple sentences may not seem like a lot as you're writing them, but they add up over time. And you can write a book that way. It's not. I know it's not as like convenient or conducive to like you're sitting down and writing and like having a whole day, but I think it's possible to write a book balancing chronic illness full time job. It's just hard, and you have to manage your energy, and you have to figure out what your priorities are, and it's okay. That's also going to be my thing. Is like I started writing Fires in Their Wake freshman year of high school. I put it down. I picked it up. I put it down a dozen of times. I didn't publish it until 2 years after I graduated college. Even though I kept saying I'm going to publish it while I'm in college. I'm going to publish it this year. I'm going to publish it that year. I didn't have the time, energy, resources to do that years later.
Mm.
So it is okay for you to like put things down when you don't have the energy. You don't have to finish it within like the time frame of what people tell you. Because I think also when you're in like the self-publishing game, you're gonna see people who are writing 1 to 2 books a month. You're gonna see people who are like I was in a lot of like self-publishing groups, right? Learning how to do this. And one was like the road to like 50K or something, talking about how you could like get $50,000 from your books. People in those groups, utterly, I don't know how they have the time, energy, capability to do this. They are on another level, okay? Because they are writing multiple books a month. They are like managing all of this stuff. You do not have to do that, okay? These people may have success, great for them. They may have the capability to do that, great for them. So they are showing off for social media. And two, we are not all built the same. And I want to enforce like writing should be fun. Writing should be fun first and foremost, and you should get joy out of doing this. Publishing, money, all of that stuff comes later. If you are not
Two
enjoying,
different goals.
I'm like they're two goals for sure, right? But if you do not enjoy this, do not do it. Do not do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't. Does that make sense?
There's easier ways to make money, my friends.
Truly,
Be careful of those 2 or 3 books a month because I have found many people who tell me like like I'm also an illustrator, and so a lot of times they'll be like, "Oh, look at this beautiful painting I did." And it's like, "Oh my god, that's amazing. That would have taken me like 3 weeks." And, "Oh no, I did it in a day." AI? Well, yes, but
yeah,
I wrote the prompts. And it's like, so when you're seeing things where someone's accomplishing really beautiful, amazing things that are happening in time periods, you're like, I don't get that. Just be aware there's other things that might be going on the sidelines that if you're into the craft of it, you don't want to take those shortcuts.
for sure. You
That's
sum
been
that up a
fun.
lot better than I.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a writer, I'm an artist, I've done kids' books. I'm in so many different universes, and all of those universes are being like encroached upon with AI. There are things, AI is a tool, and every tool is a weapon if you hold it right. And that is one hell of a weapon. And it can be used against the people it was supposed to help. And that's really frustrating. And there's also
Yeah,
aspects of AI that I'm like, I can really see where this could be really a helpful jumping off point. If we're looking at AI in the medical world, my God, it's amazing. It's able to detect cancers 5 years before they become cancer. This is a phenomenal tool for figuring out what the next flu vaccine will be. I want AI to do that. I do not want AI to do my writing for me so I have time to do the dishes. That is not the trade-off I was asking for.
Yeah, for sure. AI in the writing world is wild.
Oh my God. And in the art world, it's just
Sure.
insane because they're trying to legitimize these, prompted AI artworks but it's really my art because it's my vision. It's like, nope, you stole that.
Mhm.
You stole that because you used any of these AI generations. Each one of them stole people's artwork. So instead of hiring the artists that you liked and explaining it to them and working with them in collaboration, you stole that. I just need to be so clear about it because I feel like people are not getting that it's theft.
Yeah.
This is not something you're owed. And it certainly wasn't something that the AI companies were owed. Like Mid-Journey, are you fucking kidding me? Yeah, it's very frustrating. Where was I going with that? Oh, back to the imposter syndrome. When you're an artist, there's such a cost to being an artist. There's a financial issue between classes, the actual products, the canvases, all of that. That's all expensive. So it already has this jumping off point. I almost feel like the imposter syndrome for writers is so much worse because there's no jumping off point. Almost all of us have access to at least a pencil and a piece of paper, and everyone has access to the alphabet who is in literacy. And all of us can have access to it. Most of us are not going to be Shakespeare, but that's where that fear comes in. Is like, well, we all have access to those 26 letters. Am I the person who actually makes those letters come together in a way that creates feeling, emotion, and lessons? Like, that's a hard one. I'm always second guessing myself, and I'm always like in this like weird swing back and forth between this is the most brilliant thing that's ever been written, and oh my God, when did I learn how to write? When did I learn what words were? Because what is wrong with you? And there is no middle ground for me.
Yep. Yep. I would agree. I would agree.
Delusions of grandeur or delusions of don't ever write again. It's one or the other.
Yep. But the one thing I would recommend for that I found that has helped, take the quotes from your book, take the quotes from your writing that you genuinely love, that you were like, this is God's gift to man.
Yes.
Take those quotes, put them somewhere, write them on a sticky note, do whatever. Put that at your desk. When you are having the days where you're like, I cannot write, I am but a toddler with a crayon, right? Read those, okay? Because you will at least remind yourself that maybe not everything you write is phenomenal, God's gift to man, but you wrote a couple sentences. You did something. And sometimes that is enough to remind you and like be like, okay, yeah, maybe I'm not the worst like writer in the whole universe and I don't have to like dig myself in a hole now. And oh God, I was about to shade a very popular author.
That's not fun. I'm here for that.
I was gonna say, hey, at least you can remind yourself you're not Colleen Hoover.
That's been fun. That's been a whole thing. But you do make a really good point in that I've read books that have been recommended highly to me where I'm like, this is not writing I feel is good. And it feels very like Dita Von Teese that, you could be the juiciest, prettiest little peach in the world, but someone's not gonna like peaches. So it's also okay. People don't necessarily like your writing. But if you feel like you're not qualified, I would like you to just look at the cabinet that's running the United States and then tell me you're not qualified for something. It's a good mental exercise when you're worried you're not enough.
Truly. Anything you write with your own brain and imagination is going to be better than what AI can write for you.
That's another fascinating discussion to me about AI because I keep hearing like that's just the end of art. And it's like, I just don't believe that because AI will only produce what you creatively prompt it to do. And that means that it will never be able to guess what I would create because I don't know what I create. And that just feels like it feels interesting to me. I feel like it's just another layer to this discussion. But I also see the upsides in like getting a jumping off point. Like with AI and art, I've seen some AI art that was like, wow, that's interesting. These forms are interesting. I wouldn't have come up with those forms myself. So like like you're on Pinterest, you now know that Pinterest is like, I don't know, 60% AI. Exhausting. But I'm able to look at some of these paintings going, that's fascinating form. That's an interesting lighting pattern I wouldn't have thought of. And then I can be inspired by those things. and bring them forward. Like if I'm writing
Yeah.
like a blurb for the book, I have used AI to write a blurb for a book, but it's a good
Mhm.
just jumping off point to go, okay, that feels structured well. This is, and now I'm going to change this and this and this. I feel like it's meant to be a jumping off point, not a end product thing. But
For sure. Yeah, because like I've used AI to like help, come up with ideas for a blurb or help, do kind of that kind of stuff. Like
trending hashtag because I do not want to keep looking everywhere.
truly. And so like I think it can be really beneficial that way. But yeah, like using it to like write a full or having it write
Create a
a full book.
marketing plan. Oh my God, Chat
Yeah.
GPT. Create a marketing plan for this book. Whoa, that was so helpful.
Yeah.
That was a helpful prompt for Chat GPT.
Yeah. I'm like it can be a really great tool for authors and other creative people and other artists. Just like don't have it make the full product though. And like because even if it's like half decent, even if it's like taking other parts of good writing and like smushing them together, it's going to lack like the human perspective. It's going to lack the humanity and the emotion because I don't think a machine will ever be able to convey the like emotion of being human and like all of that goes onto that.
We just saw what they did with advertising because we had the first major AI entirely generated ads this year, and
Mhm.
they did not hit the mark at all.
No.
And that's amazing to me because, like, marketing advertising is all about hit the story, hit the
Mhm.
feels, hit the point. And that AI could not take those three things and create something compelling just shows me that that's missing the soul.
Yeah.
Not that a ton of media right now is not missing its soul. I mean, like, I have not seen Snow White yet, but I can tell you just from like the blurbs and the sidelines I've seen, I'm like, oh, we're missing some good storytelling issues here. Oh my, we forgot character driven, not plot driven. Ooh.
Yeah.
Hmm. Wicked, I felt was very similar in that vein too. I just finished that one. I was like, I loved that book. This hurts my soul. That was 2.5 hours. There were some good moments.
I I will say I did enjoy the Wicked movie, but I came from the musical side of it. I haven't read the book, so
I saw original cast. I got to
oh,
see
amazing,
Kristen Chenoweth, which oh my god, yes, yes, and everything American
amazing,
Gods and anything. I will watch that woman. And Adina Menzel, I'm so bad at her name. I love her. I've seen her in Rent. I've seen her in Wicked. I love that woman.
phenomenal.
Yeah, I did not feel like Ariana Grande had the voice to carry off Kristen Chenoweth's parts.
Fair
Bless,
enough.
bless her little sweetheart. I forgot who the boy is from Bridgerton, but that's a pretty lamp that should have like I don't know. There's no chemistry. There's no fire. It felt you know what it felt AI driven to me. A lot of like the design choices, the outfit choices. A lot of it was like that doesn't make sense.
Fair.
The longer I looked at them, the more I was like, I don't that yeah,
It's so
sorry.
fair.
That's my
No,
sideline. I feel like that's what AI misses is the surprise and delight. And that's where it falls down. It's like I always love something that just delights me. And like in Wicked, it was the wizard's puppet. I thought that was delightful and amazing. And the little fish, I thought were like a really delightful little thing. And I think that when you're
mhm,
looking at saying AI driven, it's like this is the thing that all the target markets and markers will make people happy, and it never surprises or delights.
yeah, truly.
I've kept you on here for an hour and a half. I am so sorry.
It's
At some
okay.
time, I'm like, wow, why am I hurting? I need pills. And you probably need to do other things today, but I really thank you for coming back on the show. And
Yeah,
I think
thank you
you're
for
coming
having me.
back on again to talk to us about the history of healthcare in your own podcast.
Yeah, I would love to do that. For
More writing anytime.
sure.
Okay. And if you are listening to this, just head over to Invisible Not Broken, and in our show notes, I will have a direct link to all of Faye's books, and I'll have a link to Scrivener just in case you want to check that out. All right, thanks everyone. Be kind, be gentle, and in whatever way it looks like to you, be fierce.
Have a good day.
All right, guys.